Welcome to Chem Mastery with Dr. Z. In this video, I'm going to show you how to calculate the RF value by answering past paper exam questions for GCSE chemistry. So this is a past paper exam question where in this question you can see that a student was investigating food dye using paper chromatography. In this method, this is the method he used. So he bought a spot of the food coloring X here at the bottom and on the start line. And then he bought spots for four separate dyes A, B, C, and D next to it on the start line. And he placed the bottom of the paper in water and left it for several minutes. So this figure here shows you the apparatus the student used. You can see that there are two things here in this one. So the first question asks you to write down two mistakes the student made in setting up the experiment and explain the problems the what problem one or two or the of the mistakes would cause. So you can see here that there are two problems. The first thing is that the students put the start line below the level of the solvent. So the water level was higher than the start line, which is a big problem because this can cause the different dyes to dissolve in the solvent, which is water. The second problem is that the start line was drawn in ink. This is another problem because you have to draw the start line in a pencil, not using ink, because ink can also dissolve in water. So the answer would be that water level is above the start line, so the dyes can dissolve in the solvent, which is water. The second problem is that the start line was drawn in ink, and the problem with that is that the ink itself would run on the paper because the ink will dissolve and also can run on the paper. So these are the two problems that the solvent or the two mistakes the student did. So question B is that another student set up the apparatus correctly. So this figure here will show the student's results. The results for die D is not shown. This is die D, so we have X, which is the mixture or the food coloring dyes, and then we have the pure substances A, B, C, and D, but D is not shown. So the question is to asking you to calculate the RF value of dye A. So we are talking about die A and give your answer to two significant figures. So to answer this question, you need to use your ruler and calculate two things. The first thing is the distance traveled by the solvent, and this is the distance between the start line and the solvent front. So this is the distance. When you calculate this distance, using your ruler, you're going to find that it's 8.2 centimeter. And then the second thing, you need to calculate the distance traveled by the die A. So die A traveled this distance, and when you calculate it at the center of the spot. So between the start line and the center of the spot, and the distance traveled by die A is 2.8 centimeter. So we know that the RF value is the distance moved by the spot over the distance moved by the solvent. So the RF value for solvent A would equal 2.8 centimeter over 8.2, and giving your answer with two significant figures, it's 0.34. So this is your answer, and this is the RF value for solvent A. Question C asks you about die D. So die D has an RF value of 0.82. So they give you the RF value here. Calculate the distance that die D moved on the chromatography paper. So now we have the RF value, which is 0.8, 0.8, and then we need the distance moved by the spot. So 0.8 would be the distance moved by D over the distance moved by the solvent, which is 8.2 because we already calculated that. So the distance here will equal divided by A by D equals 8.2 times 0.8, and when you do this to two significant figures as well, it's going to be 6. The value is 6.6. So this is your value. Question D asks you to explain how the different dyes in X are separated by paper chromatography. When you answer this question, there are three things that you need to mention in your answer in order to get the full marks on that question. So this question is a three-marker question and there are 3 points. The first thing that you need to consider is that different dyes have different solubility in waters. And second point is that they also have different attraction to the paper. And then finally, you need to mention the separation. So the different dyes were carried at different distances on the paper. So, in order to write your answer in the best possible way, I would say that you need to mention the mobile phase and explain that the mobile phase, which is water, will carry soluble component of the mixture. And the greater the solubility of the component, the faster it moves. So different dyes have different solubilities on water. So don't ever forget to mention this sentence. And then the stationary phase, which is the paper, will slow down the movement of the component attracted to it. And the stronger the interaction or the attraction to the paper, the slower the components move. So different dyes have different attraction to the paper. Again, this is the most important sentence here because this is when you get your mark. Finally, the separation would be the result of the balance between the component interactions with the stationary phase and the mobile phase. So different dyes are carried at different distances. So again, this is when you will get your 4 marks.